Yeah, I did. I did. Because he put his hand down.
Mic check.
That's the word, Joe. This is the one. It's just like his print. Or something, and he just. No, I can take that. Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, we're waiting on that. So they did come up.
Right.
They said they were waiting on that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. Right.
Yeah, we're pushing after.
Extrapolate that to some of the, somebody will be right. Is this on? Okay, so good afternoon. I would like to share a quick update regarding our COVID-19 response efforts and from the Department of Health and Environment. Brad, you need to put that up here. Thank you. Okay. We're pleased to announce that the new COVID-19 Update Center is now live. The web address we've mentioned at previous briefings, kdheks.gov/coronavirus, now directs to a more user-friendly resource center with all of the most up-to-date information. I encourage you all to visit the website and subscribe for email updates. This situation has evolved rapidly and will continue to do so for the foreseeable future. Information is our best defense, and this resource provides our best information. We're also here this afternoon to announce critical next steps in our ongoing efforts to reduce the spread of COVID-19 and better position Kansas to combat this unprecedented emergency in the months to come. Before I walk through the details, however, I want to explain exactly why today's actions are needed. For weeks, my team of seasoned emergency management professionals has worked around the clock to adjust to rapidly evolving CDC guidance as the threat of COVID-19 has made its way across our nation and into our daily lives. We've taken painstaking efforts to proceed in ways that make sense for Kansas and respond to the unique needs of our communities. The steps we're announcing today will create the space we need at the state level to develop a more strategic, resilient infrastructure so that we can get ahead of this threat and limit its long-term impact. Those actions will come in two parts. Our response effort has been a collaborative process in Kansas from day one, and that collaboration continues with today's announcement. I am joined by Education Commissioner Randy Watson, along with representatives from the Kansas National Education Association and the Kansas Association of School Boards, to announce that I am ordering all K-12 schools to close and cease in-person instruction for the duration of the 2019-2020 school year. Administrative offices and support facilities may remain open for limited purposes in consultation with state and local authorities. Once they are thoroughly sanitized, some buildings may be reopened for small groups of school personnel charged with implementing a plan for continuous learning. This difficult decision comes after close consultation with the education professionals here today who represent local school boards, school administrators, and local teachers. The reality of this pandemic is that it cannot be controlled statewide if school buildings return to normal operations or if they respond inconsistently within our local communities. Unprecedented circumstances threaten the safety of our students and the professionals who work with them every day, and we must respond accordingly. Earlier this week, we announced a diverse task force of education professionals to develop alternative instructional options to provide continuous learning, distribution and availability of meals, and childcare with an emphasis on children of parents of first responders, healthcare providers, and other emergency workers. They have been working intensively over the last few days and are on track to release their recommendations this afternoon, tomorrow afternoon. Tomorrow afternoon. We realize that closing classrooms and moving to a continuous learning plan cannot begin to replicate Kansas's outstanding education structure as we know it. But continuous learning will provide methods and strategies that will build a bridge back to the world-class learning our students benefit from today. This will take clearer shape as the task force recommendations are released, but today's actions will give educators and parents a sense of what's coming so they can begin to adapt and make plans as needed. Second, I'm joined once again by General Lee Taffanelli, Director of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, as well as Secretary D'Angela Burns-Wallace, of the Department of Administration and Office of Information Technology Services to announce that effective Monday, March 23rd, for 2 weeks, most state employees will be directed to stay home on administrative leave to minimize additional risk of exposure to the virus. This will also allow us to assess our primary essential functions so we can bring them back up in a sustainable, safe manner. This action applies only to executive branch agencies under my direct jurisdiction. Independent agencies such as the Office of the Attorney General, the Insurance Department, Secretary of State, and others are implementing their own plans for slowing the spread of COVID-19. While the circumstances driving this step are unparalleled, the action itself is not. On numerous occasions throughout the year, normal state government operations are suspended for various reasons, ranging from holidays to inclement weather to natural disasters. Our team of highly dedicated public servants across the state is well-trained and well-equipped to ensure that essential state services are provided. I've directed my cabinet agencies, in addition to boards and commissions, to each develop an internal plan that will ensure a seamless transition. They will identify which employees can work remotely, which will need to be placed on administrative leave, and how to best ramp operations back up to full scale at the appropriate time. Secretary Burns-Wallace will review and coordinate these plans, which we will announce on Friday, March 20th. Before I turn it over to other agency officials, I'd like to speak directly to the thousands of Kansans who have been tuning into these updates online. First of all, in recognition of St. Patrick's Day, I'd like to say Sláinte, which in Irish means to your health. I'm sure you all have a lot of questions, so here's what will happen next. If you are a parent, an educator, or a school district employee, please know your local district superintendent was briefed earlier today. He or she will be in touch with you within the next 24 hours to explain what today's actions mean for you, your family, and your school district. If you have urgent questions, please direct your call to your local school district. If you are a state employee, more details about your job and how it might temporarily change will be announced on Friday, March 20th. In the meantime, agency supervisors will inform employees of how they should proceed. Moving forward, Secretary of the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, Dr. Lee Norman, will continue to provide briefings on Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, or as needed. Coronavirus has caused massive disruption in all of our lives. As Kansans, we've always done whatever is necessary to protect our families and our communities, and this moment is no different. As governor, I will continue to do everything in my power to help ease the burden these unavoidable steps will place on you and your families. In the weeks ahead, please remember to continue to be vigilant, continue to wash your hands, cough into your sleeve, and practice social distancing. Ad astra per aspera literally means to the stars through difficulty. Our Kansas motto has never been more appropriate, and it is through our Kansas spirit that we will overcome this challenge and emerge even stronger as a state. And with that, I'll hand it over to Commissioner Randy Watson.
Thank you, Governor, and good afternoon, everyone. We are grateful for the decisive action that the Governor is taking today, but we're also grateful for collaboration of education personnel and experts that have really come together to move us in a completely different direction. I want to thank those leaders in the Kansas State Department of Education, our Kansas Board of Education, the leadership of the United School Administrators. G.A. Bowie is here with us today, Kansas Association School Board, Shannon Kimball, the President, Kansas School Superintendents Association, Mike Berblinger from Bueller is here today, and certainly our friends at KNEA. Mark Farr will speak in just a few minutes. As the governor said, ensuring safety for our students and for our staff is our top priority. This decisive action today takes steps to do that. But we have another priority in school, and that is that our students have the ability to continue to learn. And we're just getting started on what that transition will look like in this unprecedented time. The Continuous Learning Task Force that the governor mentioned is literally working as we speak to produce lesson plans and guidance to all public and private accredited schools in Kansas on how we may have some semblance of learning going forward in these times. They're using their expert knowledge to develop learning environments appropriate for all grade levels from pre-kindergarten through high school at the highest of academic standards. Closing classrooms and moving to this continuous learning plan, as the governor mentioned, can in no way replicate the great learning that goes on in our world-class schools. It just simply will not. But as the governor mentioned, it will provide us a bridge during these difficult times to bring us back then when there is a sense of normal. This is a defining moment for all educators, parents, and students in our state, and how we choose to respond will say a lot about our direction forward. We ask for your support of the parents, our communities, and our students as teachers and students transition into this new learning environment. We know parents will have a lot of questions, and so will students. We're working just as quickly as possible to provide answers for those. As the governor mentioned, tomorrow at 5 o'clock, the task force will produce their report and their resources that then teachers can go about making plans in the future. Questions, as the governor said, about those plans should be directed to your local school districts. I am very proud of the response Kansas educators, parents and students, and policymakers have come together to do at this time in Kansas. And with that, I'd like to introduce Mark Farr. Mark is the president of Kansas National Education Association. Mark?
Good afternoon, and thank you, Commissioner Watson. Kansas NEA is committed to Governor Kelly's plan. We believe the KSDE Continuous Learning Committee, established by Commissioner Watson, will deliver a framework Kansas educators can use over the next few months to create a bridge back to the world-class learning Kansans know and expect. Governor Kelly, thank you for your leadership on this important issue.
All right, with that, we'll take some questions. Don't go too far.
Governor, does this apply to private and parochial schools as well?
Yes.
And this is for the duration of this school year, so schools would start up in August as normal?
Yes.
Or not?
Well, we'll make that call in August or before August, but as of now, yes. We're suspending the school year 2019-2020. And then we will move forward as conditions allow.
So it's like next Monday, kids don't go to school.
That's correct.
How many students in schools are we talking about?
I'm going to let some educators, who knows how many kids we've got. Randy, why don't you come on back up?
In the accredited schools, public and private in Kansas, we have just under 500,000 students.
Students, how many? Okay.
Commissioner Watson, can you address, and maybe this hasn't been decided yet, how are graduating seniors, high school seniors going to be handled?
Jonathan, thank you for that question. I think that's going to be foremost on people's mind, and so we're going to make sure, we're going to be asking school boards to look at requirements for graduation relative to the state. Many of our communities have graduation requirements higher. They're going to examine that, but I think our first attention will be to make sure that those students graduate on time.
Are you going to, when you don't do all this stuff online or at home, do you need as many teachers?
Well, I think we're going to wait to see the plan that puts forth tomorrow. It'll be a combination plan of small group instruction, some online instruction, maybe some different ways of looking at education. But I think we certainly will need every educator in order to do this work.
And is that what KDA thinks?
Yes.
Yeah, if I can make very clear, Martin, you know, this is not an attempt to lay off anybody, and employees will be paid, both the salaried employees and the hourly employees.
What do we know about school lunches? Obviously for children in poverty, that's a major issue.
Jonathan, again, and I'm going to broaden that question. One of the concerns and one of the reasons that the governor recommended that we close schools this week is one of the major concerns are students of poverty, students of disability, students of color that do not have equal access to all kinds of environments learning outside the school. That would also include food service. Our staff, under Dale Dennis's guidance, asked for a waiver from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. We have that waiver. School districts are providing that. We can serve breakfast and lunch to any student ages 1, so that wouldn't even be a student, but ages 1 to 18. We can deliver that in every community that applies for a waiver. We took an unscientific poll, Governor, but we were just commending many of the places like Lawrence, where Shannon is on the board for their delivery. And we had school districts yesterday that delivered 500, 600, and 800 meals in one day. So this is very important, not just on the meals, Jonathan, but I think how we're going to engage those families and those students that maybe don't have as equal access to online learning or other types of learning as we go forward.
So you might be sending teachers around to people's homes to help the students there, or?
I think what we're doing is we're going to let schools, we're going to give them some guidelines. By about 40 of the top educators in Kansas have been working on this for the last several days. We'll give those guidelines to each school district, and then Augusta will take that and say this is how we ought to operate those, and how that ought to look. It would be too early to say how that's going to look, but I can tell you by the time we get to next week, we'll have better plans in every one of our school districts on that delivery model.
Governor, how many people are going to be affected by your stay-at-home order? Do you have a roundhouse idea how many people you're talking about?
How many state employees? D'Angelo, you're here. Why don't you take the state employee questions?
And do they have to stay home, or just, could they play golf as long as they're 6 feet
Secretary
away?
Burns Wallace will respond.
So we have close to 18,000 state employees across the state. And so the idea here is following the guidelines of social distancing and staying in small groups. The idea is that we don't want our state employees in the offices where we can't follow those guidelines. So to give us that space and to be able to follow the guidelines we're putting out into the general public, we're mimicking those in our office spaces. So the idea there is that all of the guidance that has been shared across how people should move and where they should be and social gatherings would be the same that we would say for the state employees as they move out of our spaces. But we didn't want to continue to create work environments where we are bringing large groups together and not being able to social distance. The 2 weeks follows what you're hearing in terms of giving a bit of time and incubation period to allow for that space and to help to level that curve. It also gives us the ability to do a little bit more planning and to do some deep cleaning as well.
But they're not necessarily working, they're just not coming into the office.
They are not, the majority of the state employees will be on administrative leave, except for those that will be delivering essential functions that will be identified by every agency.
Do the people on this administrative leave get paid?
They do. All state employees will be paid.
So, I don't mean to be a little cranky here, but if I'm a taxpayer, why should I be paying people if they're not working?
Yeah, the reality, John, is that we will be paying these people one way or the other. We can either pay them their salary or they'll be on unemployment, and we'll use those taxpayer dollars to provide for them.
you guys doing about students who either don't have access to the internet or a computer, whether it be because of financial reasons or because of, like in a rural community, you might not have the best internet?
It's rural and urban, that's a reality, and that's why the task force, the continuous learning task force we have put together, they are taking those things into account. You simply can't just move to a strict online learning because there's just places don't have devices, they don't have access, or they don't have good enough access. So it will have to be a combination, and every family will have to be making some determination of how learning can go forward. So we have, I think, we have handouts of the people that are on the task force, and again, that recommendation will come to me and the governor tomorrow at 5 o'clock.
Governor, going back to state services, tax time is almost upon us. The federal government just announced today that they're going to delay the April 15th deadline to this summer. Any plans about, given what we're talking about now, what revenue might do?
You know, it is not just a tax deadline that we've got coming up. There are all sorts of other deadlines. People's licenses expiring, you know, daycare providers not able to get in all of their continuing education on time to maintain. So we recognize that, and each individual entity is working on coming up with a policy on that. But I think you're going to see extensions on those kinds of things. We're going to have people, I mean, we're asking people to, you know, not come to work. You know, we need to be sort of shutting down some of the state operations, like Department of Motor Vehicles and getting your driver's license renewed if you're up. We're going